Why is society getting more stupid every single day? It's a question that echoes in classrooms, offices, and even in our homes. We scroll endlessly. We consume noise. But rarely do we stop to think, is this just the fault of technology? Or is it something deeper, something older, something we've ignored for centuries? Machiavelli saw this coming. Yes, the same Machiavelli who is often painted as ruthless, manipulative, even evil. But in reality, he was a truth-teller, a man who looked at power, society, and human nature without illusions. He warned us, goodness, when left unguarded by wisdom, turns into weakness, and weakness, when multiplied across society, turns into stupidity. In this video, we are not just talking about IQ scores or screen addiction. We are diving into something far more unsettling. Why goodness itself, the very thing we are told to value, may be the reason society keeps getting dumber, and how Machiavelli's hidden truth about virtue explains the collapse of reason we see today. Think about it. Why do leaders who smile, preach kindness, and promise morality often fail to lead us anywhere meaningful? Why does society reward people who perform goodness instead of those who practice wisdom? And why are we so quick to confuse appearances with reality? Machiavelli knew the answers. And once you hear them, you'll never look at goodness the same way again. Most people know Machiavelli for one line: "It is better to be feared than loved." But almost no one talks about his warnings about fake goodness, about how people who cling to shallow virtue become tools for those who understand power. That's the side of Machiavelli almost no one discusses, and in this video you will discover it. We'll explore how modern society mirrors the mistakes Machiavelli described 500 years ago. How good people, when they lack prudence, end up exploited by those who are bold. How social CD amplifies stupidity by rewarding outrage, not truth. And why, despite our advances, we may actually be walking backward into a darker age of ignorance. But here's the real twist. Machiavelli was not against goodness. He believed in it, but only when paired with strategy, with cunning, with wisdom. Because goodness without those things is like a lamb walking into the lion's den. It gets eaten alive. Stay with me until the end of this video, because we are going to uncover how you can protect yourself from this trap, how you can sharpen your mind, balance goodness with strength, and avoid being swept into the tide of collective stupidity. You'll see how Machiavelli's lessons, though written in the Renaissance, explain our world today more clearly than any modern thinker. And here's the part most people miss. Machiavelli didn't just write for kings and rulers. He wrote for you, for anyone who wants to survive in a world that punishes the naive and ards the bold. He left behind a blueprint, not for evil, but for resilience, for the art of being both good and strong. So if you've ever wondered why the smartest voices get drowned out, why societies choose appearances over truth, and why being too good can actually destroy you, then you are in the right place. Because once you understand Machiavelli's shocking truth about goodness, you'll see society's stupidity for what it really is. Not an accident, not just a byproduct of technology, but a design shaped by human nature and exploited by power. Welcome to Psych Algorithm, where we break down the hidden patterns of psychology, philosophy, and power. If you're ready to challenge the way you see the world, hit that subscribe button now, because this journey has only just begun. Before we talk about the decline of society today, we need to go back 500 years to a man who saw human nature with absolute clarity, Niccolò Machiavelli. He was not a dreamer. He was not a poet of ideals. He was a strategist of reality. While others spoke of virtue, kindness, and moral duty, Machiavelli stripped away the eons. He asked a simple but brutal question: what actually works in the pursuit of power? In his most famous book, The Prince, he revealed something that shocked the world. He wrote that a ruler must always appear good, merciful, and just, but behind the mask, he must act with calculation and strategy. This was not hypocrisy to him. It was survival. People wanted to believe in goodness, but power demanded more. A prince who was only good, who trusted too much in honesty and virtue, would be destroyed by those who were not bound by such limits. Goodness alone, he argued, was fragile. It cracked under the pressure of ambition, greed, and ruthlessness. Machiavelli observed his world carefully. Florence, Italy in his time was a place of shifting alliances, betrayals, and sudden changes of fortune. One day a family ruled with grace and wealth. The next day they were in exile, stripped of everything. He saw firsthand how those who relied too heavily on virtue were crushed by men who understood fear, deception, and manipulation. For him, the lesson was obvious. Appearances mattered, but reality was always sharper. To the people, a leader should look like a man of goodness. He should speak the right words, show compassion, and promise fairness. But when threats came, when rivals moved against him, he had to act with cunning. He had to be bold enough to break promises. If keeping them meant his ruin, he had to be willing to act against mercy, against kindness, against honesty, if survival demanded it. Because in the end, the world did not reward the innocent. It rewarded the strategic. And yet, here lies the paradox. Machiavelli never said that goodness was worthless. In fact, he saw it as essential, but only as a tool. Appearances of goodness created trust, loyalty, and peace among the people. They calmed the restless. They made a ruler loved, even admired. But if that goodness was not backed by strength, it turned into a weakness others could exploit. A ruler who trusted blindly in his reputation of kindness became easy prey. Goodness opened doors, but it also left the door wide open for betrayal. This paradox is uncomfortable. We want to believe that pure virtue is enough. We want to imagine that kindness alone can lead nations, that honesty alone can protect us. But Machiavelli dismantled that illusion. He showed us that goodness without power is an invitation to disaster. And even worse, those who cling to goodness without strategy often end up empowering the very people who are cunning, ruthless, and deceptive. To Machiavelli, human beings were not angels. They were selfish, driven by fear, desire, and ambition. If a leader expected them to reward goodness with loyalty, he was already doomed. People, he said, admire goodness, but they follow strength. They cheer kindness, but they obey power. And in moments of crisis, they abandon the good man who lacks force and turn toward the one who knows how to command. This is why Machiavelli's paradox feels so sharp, even today. We live in a time where goodness is broadcast everywhere, on screens, in speeches, in endless posts about virtue. But the reality behind those appearances often tells a different story, and just as he warned, when goodness is not paired with strategy, it becomes fragile, it bends, it breaks, and those who know how to use fear, cunning, and boldness step in to rule over everyone else. Machiavelli never celebrated cruelty for its own sake. He never encouraged evil without reason. What he taught was far more subtle. If you want to protect your position, your people, and even your vision goodness, you must be prepared to act strategically. Appear good, but know when to strike. Build trust, but keep control. Promise fairness, but never let naivety become your downfall. This is the paradox that defines power, and it is the same paradox that still defines our world. Look at our world today, and you'll see the same patterns Machiavelli described centuries ago, playing out in plain sight. Leaders who smile, speak kindly, and preach goodness are celebrated. They win elections with charm, they gain followers with soft promises, and they stand on stages proclaiming values that sound noble. Their words shine with hope, their gestures radiate compassion. But when it comes to action, many of them fail. They stumble in the face of real problems. They make poor choices. They lack vision. And society, not the leaders, pays the price for their weakness. Think about the leaders we've seen rise in recent decades. Some present themselves as champions of morality, defenders of the common people, voices of truth and justice. They speak in slogans, they smile for cameras, they appear on screens as saviors, but behind the curtain, their plans are shallow, their promises are vague, their strategies are weak, and when challenges come, economic crises, political conflicts, global emergencies, they reveal how unprepared they truly are. The mask of goodness can win applause, but it cannot solve real. Machiavelli would say they are playing a dangerous game, using virtue as decoration instead of a tool supported by strength. Meanwhile, society claps for these performances because we have become addicted to appearances. We value speeches more than results, promises more than action, and kindness more than competence. A soft tone and a few noble words are enough to convince the crowd, even when the outcomes are disastrous. This is not just about politics. It is the same in business, media, even in our personal lives. People are drawn to the illusion of goodness because it comforts them, but illusions do not last. And when they collapse, the cost is heavy. The deeper problem runs through the very structure of society. Studies show that intelligence is not rising as we once believed, but declining. IQ scores in several developed nations have begun to fall after decades of growth. Literacy rates are dropping in many places, with young generations reading less and less. The attention spans are shrinking. The ability to focus for long periods is eroding. We no longer sit with complex ideas or challenging texts. Instead, we skim, scroll, and swipe. We consume bits of information like fast food. Easy, quick, and empty. We are reading less. We are thinking less. We are reasoning less. The habit of questioning, the discipline of patience, the art of reflection, all are slipping away. And when a society stops thinking, doesn't just become ignorant, it becomes easy to control. Ignorance is not neutral. It is fertile ground for manipulation. Leaders without vision thrive in such an environment. They do not need to present evidence or strategy. They only need to present a pleasing image. They only need to play the role of goodness, and the masses follow. Machiavelli understood this long before the studies, long before the research. He saw that people preferred appearances over truth, and that power lay in shaping perception. And this is exactly what we see today. Leaders and influencers have mastered the art of appearances, using goodness as a performance. They say the right words, adopt the right slogans, and align themselves with the right causes. But beneath the surface, it is often empty. Goodness has become a show. It is a stage act designed to win applause and loyalty without substance. A leader tweets a kind message, and the crowd cheers. A celebrity posts a hashtag, and millions repost it without question. Companies drape themselves in slogans of virtue, justice, equity, sustainability, while continuing with the same practices that harm communities and the planet. It looks good. It sounds good. But it isn't deep. This kind of goodness is surface-level morality. It has no real strength behind it. It is not grounded in courage, or sacrifice, or wisdom. It is performance, dressed as virtue. And the more society sighs this shallow goodness, the weaker it becomes. Because when goodness turns into theater, when it becomes a set of words and images without substance, it no longer protects. It deceives. It blinds. And this blindness has a cost. When goodness is only an image, it makes people trust without questioning. It leads to bad policies that sound noble but collapse in practice. It makes citizens applaud decisions that look moral on the surface, but create long-term harm. It allows those in power to manipulate emotions instead of solving problems. Nations can drift into economic decline, political instability, or cultural weakness, all while the people believe they are being led by goodness. Machiavelli would remind us that this is the most dangerous trap of all, not cruelty, not open tyranny, but the soft disguise of goodness that hides incompetence, because people rally behind it. They defend it. They repeat it. They believe they are on the side of virtue, when in fact, they are feeding weakness. And in the end, entire nations pay the price for this blindness. You can see it in policies that sound compassionate but fail to address reality. You can see it in movements that focus on symbols rather than solutions. You can see it in leaders who smile endlessly while the structures around them crumble. All of this is the cost of naive goodness. Goodness that is not balanced with wisdom. Goodness that is not paired with strength. Goodness that does not look beyond the surface. For Machiavelli, this was predictable. He knew that people, driven by their desire for comfort and hope, would often choose the leader who appeared most virtuous. But he also knew that appearances fade, and when they do, the consequences strike everyone. The ruler who lacks vision is exposed, but by then the damage has spread to the people who trusted him. Entire societies are weakened because they preferred the mask of goodness over the reality of strategy. This is where we find ourselves now, surrounded by words, images and gestures of virtue, but lacking depth, direction, and strength. A culture that celebrates kindness as performance, but neglects wisdom as practice. A generation that consumes slogans instead of ideas, and beneath it all, the same dangerous truth Machiavelli warned about. When goodness becomes a mask without substance, it does not protect society, it destroys it from within. Machiavelli warned that goodness has value only when combined with wisdom. A ruler who is only good will be crushed. A ruler who is only ruthless will destroy everything around him. But a ruler who can blend both morality and cunning, compassion and calculation, will not only survive, but thrive. This was his paradox. He did not reject goodness. He rejected naive goodness. He did not glorify cruelty for its own sake. He understood that pure ruthlessness burns too quickly, leaving behind ruin. But when power is guided by prudence, when goodness is tempered with foresight, then it becomes something lasting. Think about it in simple terms. Imagine a leader who always tries to do the right thing, always tries to please everyone, and always avoids conflict. That leader will be admired at first, but soon crushed by those who are bolder, stronger, and less hesitant. On the other hand, imagine a leader who rules only through fear and brutality. That leader may rise quickly, but their reign becomes unstable. Hatred grows, enemies multiply, collapse is inevitable. The true survivor, Machiavelli said, is the one who can walk the fine line. Appear good, act wisely, but never be blind. Show kindness, but never at the expense of strength. Use power, but never recklessly. Now look at the world we live in today. The lessons Machiavelli wrote in the 16th century still echo loudly. But instead of blending power and prudence, society seems to be in the opposite direction. We live in a time where social media rewards stupidity more than wisdom. The loudest voice rises, not the wisest. The most emotional post spreads the fastest, not the most thoughtful. Truth takes time to digest, but viral content thrives on speed. And speed always favors exaggeration, outrage, and shallow virtue. Goodness, in this environment, is no longer a principle. It has become a performance. People don't ask, is this real? They ask, does this look good? Leaders, influencers, companies, and even ordinary individuals join in this theater. They post emotional slogans. They share hashtags. They speak the language of goodness, but not the substance, because the system doesn't reward depth. It rewards visibility. It rewards whatever can grab attention for a few seconds. Think about how many times you've seen someone rise to fame on social media, not because of their ideas, but because of their ability to spark outrage or emotional reactions. Think about how many heroes and activists gain attention through posts that look noble, but collapse under real scrutiny. The more emotional, the more extreme, the more dramatic, the faster it spreads. This is not wisdom. This is not prudence. This is performance designed to trigger quick reactions. And in the process, true goodness, quiet, steady, and principled, is drowned out. Machiavelli would likely laugh at the irony. The system that claims to value justice and truth rewards noise instead. The very platforms that say they connect people often leave them divided, angry, and distracted. And the leaders who rise through this environment are not necessarily the wisest, but the most skilled performers. They learn to play the game of appearances, just as Machiavelli predicted, but without the prudence he demanded. They wield goodness as a mask, but not as a tool. So what can we do in such a world? Machiavelli would argue that survival depends on individuals learning to see through the performance. It starts small. It begins with training the mind to think deeper, resist easy answers, to ask harder questions. When you see a leader speak of justice, do you stop and ask, what do their actions show? When you see a company post about morality, do you look at how they behave behind the curtain? When you see a viral post, do you ask, is this true, or is this just designed to stir my emotions? Most people don't. Most people scroll, click, like, and share without thought. And that is why manipulation works so easily. The crowd follows the surface. But you don't have to. You can train yourself to slow down, to think critically, to step away from the herd. Learn to tell the difference between real goodness, hard choices, consistent actions, principles that cost something, and empty words that are free to say but easy to abandon. This doesn't mean rejecting goodness. It doesn't mean embracing cold ruthlessness. It means recognizing that goodness without wisdom collapses. It means understanding that wisdom without compassion becomes sterile and cruel. To live with strength, to lead with strength, you need both. You need the courage to stand for principles, but also the foresight to know when kindness becomes weakness. You need the vision to plan, but also the humanity to inspire. Because goodness alone won't protect you. The world is too harsh, too cunning, too competitive. A kind heart without a sharp mind is prey. But wisdom alone won't inspire others. A calculating mind without compassion breeds distrust and resistance. People may obey for a while, but they will never follow with loyalty. The true power lies in balance, the balance of morality and strategy, the union of principle and prudence. That's the key Machiavelli left behind. It is not about choosing one side, goodness or ruthlessness. It is about learning the art of combining them, to show the mask of goodness when needed, but to keep the sword of prudence ready, to act with mercy when it strengthens, but to act with firmness when mercy weakens, to inspire with values, but to protect with strategy. In that balance, leaders endure. In that balance, individuals survive. In that balance, societies thrive. And yet, the challenge today is greater than in Machiavelli's time, because appearances now spread faster, illusions are stronger, and the crowd is louder. The temptation to believe in the performance of goodness is everywhere. The need for critical thinking, for wisdom, for true balance, has never been more urgent. The warning Machiavelli gave is not just for rulers anymore. It is for all of us. Because in an age where noise replaces truth, and where performance replaces principle, only those who can balance goodness with wisdom will resist being swept away. Society is getting more stupid every day, not because people stopped caring. In fact, people care more than ever before. They care about justice, about kindness, about fairness. They care about making the world a better place. But the problem is that this care, this goodness, has turned hollow. It has become empty words, hashtags, and shallow performances. It no longer carries the weight of wisdom, of strategy, of real thought. And that is why society is slowly collapsing into weakness. Machiavelli warned us about this centuries ago. He saw that pure goodness, without prudence, is fragile. It doesn't last. It gets exploited. It gets crushed by those who are bold, cunning, and ruthless. His shocking truth was not that goodness is useless, but that goodness by itself is dangerous. Because when you only focus on appearing good, you leave yourself vulnerable. You make yourself easy to control. You open the door for manipulation, and entire societies, as we can see today, can fall into this trap. Think about it. True goodness is not easy. True goodness requires courage. The kind of courage that stands firm even when it's unpopular. It requires thought, the discipline to think beyond emotions and quick slogans. It requires strategy, the ability to balance compassion with strength, kindness with wisdom, morality with power. Without these, goodness is just decoration. It looks nice, but it protects no one. And this is the mistake society keeps repeating. We celebrate appearances. We cheer for leaders who speak kindly, but plan poorly. We repost slogans without questioning if they're real. We mistake noise for wisdom. We call performance goodness, when in fact it is hollow. And every time we do this, we trade depth for comfort. We trade truth for illusions. And the price of that trade is stupidity on a massive scale. Machiavelli's truth is hard to hear because it cuts against what we want to believe. We want to think that being good is enough, that kindness alone can fix the world. But history and the present prove otherwise. Goodness without wisdom is weakness. Goodness without strength is vulnerability. Goodness without courage is nothing but words. It doesn't protect. It doesn't build. It doesn't endure. But here's the other side of the truth. The side people often miss. Goodness with wisdom is power. When you combine morality with prudence, you create something unshakable. A leader who blends both earns trust and respect. A society that practices both becomes resilient. And an individual who lives with both cannot be easily broken. This is the real lesson Machiavelli left behind. Not to abandon goodness, but to refine it. Not to be naive, but to be strong. And now the question is, what will you choose? Will you settle for shallow performances of goodness? Will you let the crowd lead you with empty words? Or will you take the harder path of thinking deeper, questioning harder, and practicing goodness with wisdom? Because in the end, it's not just about society. It's about you, how you choose to live, how you choose to lead, and how you choose to see the world. So if this message struck you, if you see how important it is to balance goodness with wisdom, then I invite you to stay with us. Like this video so more people can uncover Machiavelli's truth. Subscribe to our channel, Psych Algorithm, where we dig deeper into the hidden forces shaping society, power, and the human mind. Together we can push back against the stupidity rising every day. Together we can learn not just how to be good, but how to be wise. And that, Machiavelli would say, is real power.